Hey everybody, let's rewind the clock a little bit. Star Trek The Next Generation was having first run episodes. At that point in my life, I was on a military base for basic military training. I was assigned to sit guard outside of the training instructor's office as they were in their office watching the premiere of the Next Generation episode of which the Ferengi kidnap Deanna Troi and her mother. I'm out there, unable to watch, doing my duty as they're in there laughing it up. And it wasn't until several months later, if not longer, until I'd had the opportunity to see the episode and put images to what it was I was overhearing. Here I was, a teenager, newly enlisted, basic military training, listening to the sergeants who were in charge of mine and my brother's well-being and discipline and training as they are laughing and commenting on the episode Menage a Troi. Certainly not the worst Star Trek episode ever, but definitely one of the silliest episodes. That episode will always hold a special place in me because of what it represents. And you may have an episode that is just as powerful of an attachment, of a memory that matters most to you, no matter how high quality to they really produced that scale. This segues into what prompted me to make this. MonkofMagnesia left a comment stating that Star Trek Spock's brain is often the most mocked. And I don't disagree with that. But it got me to thinking that the most ridiculous episode was the conclusion of Season 2, Star Trek The Next Generation, Shades of Grey. This episode is horrible for multiple reasons. Number one is the fact that Maurice Hurley himself calls it shit. He died in 2015, but he did something which I find to be very, very fascinating. He owned his responsibility for putting out a garbage episode as he was given the door. Maurice Hurley wasn't down and out at that point. He was able to come back. He had script suggestions for Star Trek Generations as well as other work that was done in subsequent seasons. But his showrunner, executive producer days were behind him. But that wasn't what made the episode Shades of Grey shit. To put it in perspective, at the point of time that Shades of Grey was produced, there was a writer's strike. So that is the logistical reason behind having a clip show. In my opinion, clip shows are lazy, weak, and do nothing to further the story. The only franchise of which I have ever watched that has done well with any clip shows was Stargate SG-1. Maurice Hurley himself, the writer for this episode, called it shit. He is on his way out the door. If you know anything about the behind the scenes, you already know that Maurice Hurley was a bit of friction for Star Trek The Next Generation. But he is the one responsible for having created the Borg. Originally, he wanted an insect race, but again, financial logistics cut in the way of getting that achieved. What stands out most for me with this episode is that Maurice Hurley takes accountability. I'm going to close up this section before I segue. The other reason that this is one of the worst episodes, if not, in my opinion, the worst episode, is the disservice it does to Diana Muldaur's Dr. Pulaski's character. Diana Muldaur played two distinct characters. First was Return to Tomorrow. That's the one with Sargon and the glowing spheres, and they take possession of her character, Captain Kirk's character, and Mr. Spock's character's bodies. The second episode, she plays a different character. Is there, in truth, no beauty? This is the episode that introduces the Medusans, and she is married to a Medusan. Diana Muldaur, as I said, wasn't a main cast member, but she has a history, a connection, not once but twice, to the original Star Trek. And the way they essentially made her a prop in a clip show for her final appearance, I felt was a disservice. It was disrespectful. Writer strike or not, she should have had a stronger exit. So the fact that Maurice Hurley takes responsibility, takes accountability for this episode being shit is great. And it catalyzes a difference from the original Star Trek and its writers, Star Trek The Next Generation and its runners and writers, to the so-called new Trek or modern Star Trek. But this isn't going to be a conclusion where I'm slamming on the CBS Star Trek. I'm actually going to pinpoint what is the defining moment that began this transformation from accountable Star Trek to excuses Star Trek. The 30-minute documentary Launching Enterprise Part 1 Countdown. They interview a variety of behind-the-scenes staff for Star Trek. They touch upon this disconnectedness of humans in Starfleet to the rest of the galaxy. One individual states she felt more connected, more relatable to the aliens as they had flaws. And that got me thinking, this is similar to a Greek tragedy, how the Greek gods were disconnected and felt themselves above everything, no matter how screwed up their actions. So the initial goal of Enterprise, later rebranded, renamed Star Trek Enterprise, was worthwhile. And that was, how do we get from our infighting to being an interstellar powerhouse species? Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you, Enterprise has a special place for me, a nostalgic memory connection. If you haven't seen the video where I was able to go to the Kelso Theater pub, which was Connor Trinneer's hometown, go back and watch that and you'll understand. This is not meant to be a cut on anyone. But if you go back and watch this documentary, they come right out and say it. They were exhausted. Another way of saying it is they were burnt out on Star Trek, but they kept pushing it along. And if you watch these interviews with Rick Berman, the caretaker role that he was given by Roddenberry, he took that seriously. And it's only in hindsight that it's very obvious. At the time, there were a lot of questions, but in hindsight, he did an amazing job as caretaker. Hey, everybody. I want to insert this as I'm finding this clip that I want to put, to wrap this video up. I'm rewatching the documentary for Enterprise. A lot of the interviews of the cast and the production crew, they are so excited. So if you haven't seen the documentary Launching Enterprise, it is well worth the time.
I think the trap of Star Trek, and it's inherent in Roddenberry's vision, is to envision man as perfect. And man is not perfect and never will be perfect. I'm more interested in telling stories about the mess and the striving than in, we've arrived and now we're gods.
Enterprise, or Star Trek Enterprise, had a tremendous amount of potential. But as I have included earlier, the production crew was facing burnout. Rick Berman had been given a heavy task, and that was to carry the mantle of Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future. In addition, you had Brandon Braga, who had done the everyman, had gone from zero to hero throughout the decade plus of The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and now showrunner of Enterprise.
If I had one fault, it probably was being a little bit too conservative about what would Gene think. And that my job, when he got ill and when he finally passed away, was to try to keep that vision going in a way that fit into what he wanted Star Trek to be.
In his own words on the various seasons documentaries of Enterprise, Brandon Braga didn't feel up to the task of carrying the burden of which he had been promoted.
There was a core group of writers that kept that stuff high quality, consistent, and just getting it done. And they weren't with me on Enterprise. So that was really tough. I really felt the loss of my companions. I never more acutely had I felt the loss of Ron Moore.
And there is number one. Brandon Braga didn't just rely upon Ronald D. Moore. He depended upon Ronald D. Moore And as a result of Ronald Moore's absence, he comes across as displaying inadequate to the task. It's probably better to conceive of Brannon Braga's relationship with Ronald D. Moore as an ancient mythological hero possessing a totem which gives them superior ability, whether it's speed or strength. And that is how Mr. Braga comes across, is not having Mr. Moore to turn to. He didn't believe in himself enough to succeed. And that leads to number 2. Mr. Braga doesn't fully take responsibility, accountability. Yes, he does claim to throughout these various documentaries, but it's not on the same level that Maurice Hurley took responsibility for Shades of Grey. Punch is Mr. Braga lamenting the loss of his writer companions in the previous Star Trek series, wrapping it up with his disappointment in the loss of his friendship and partnership with Ronald D. Moore. And now for the TKO punch. This is critical. You have to believe in your ability. When others promote you, contract with you, hire you, whatever the case, that they seek you out, it is because they recognize your skill, aptitude, and ability. And in these documentaries, it's obvious that Mr. Braga did not believe in himself to that level of what he was entrusted. And here's the clincher. Even though he has verbally expressed his culpability, he blames one final entity.
And I blame the studio for pushing us to do more of the same.
My friends, that was the end of Star Trek and opened the door permanently for what is considered new Trek or modern Trek, CBS Trek, Kurtzman Trek. We went from this
18 people. Dead just like that.
I know. Just put it out of your head.
No, I can't. I keep seeing them.
Sonia, stop it. We'll have time to grieve later. Now, right now, let's just get these shields operative.
a story about duty, honor, integrity. And now we pause the action so that somebody can express their feeling. That doesn't happen in real life. Your car is breaking down. That's not the moment to turn to the other occupant and have a mental bee. These stories are on repeat for the last 6,000 years. And what they are is that action trumps everything. Oh, you just want to be a hero. No, I just don't want to die. That scene between Geordi LaForge and Sonia Gomez in engineering is exactly that. Duty, integrity, action. You can mourn later, because later you might actually be alive enough to mourn. And that is what's been lost. Whether or not Mr. Braga is directly or indirectly responsible, I can't say. But I would like to show the contrast. Maurice Hurley owned that his exit episode was shit. Brannon Braga is still making excuses. And that is the reason that modern Trek, new Trek, Kurtzman Trek, whatever you would like to call it, is in the pitiful state of which it is today.